Good morning, Excellencies, civil society colleagues, and distinguished guests. I am deeply honored to join all distinguished speakers today to commemorate the 15th anniversary of the mandate and the office of the Special Representative of Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict Zones. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the critical impact this office and its mandate have had in shedding light on the darkest corners of our world, conflict zones, where unimaginable suffering occurs. 15 years ago, this office and its mandate were established at a time of desperate need, as wars increasingly targeted women's bodies as a battlegrounds. At that time, Darfur was experiencing the first genocide of the 21st century, where rape was systematically used as a weapon of war to strip away the dignity and break the will of the entire community. The Special Representative mandate was essential not just for giving voice to survivors, but shifting the way the international community address and respond to the plight of women in conflict. Knowing that women's voices are often silenced or sidelined during crisis, the mandate ensured they had a spokesperson, such as CRSV Patton and her predecessors, who have tirelessly advocated and continue to bring their suffering to the attention of the UN Security Council and other stakeholders. As we commemorate the office's achievements, it is with great sorrow that I must highlight the ongoing horror that the women of Sudan continue to endure today. Today, sexual gender-based and gender-based violence has once again become a hallmark of war in Sudan, with rape and other forms of sexual violence wielded as weapons. Women whose contribution to the society are immense and unmatched have been systematically demonized for far too long. Since the beginning of war, eyewitnesses' testimonies and reports by both the UN panel of experts and the fact-finding mission confirm that women have been abducted, raped, subjected to sexual slavery, and forced marriages by rapid support forces. With many still missing today, families live in fear, silenced by the threat of retaliation, unable to locate their loved ones. It has been more than 18 months since Sudan was engulfed in vicious violence. While the rapid support forces are still occupying and looting civilians' homes using sexual and gender-based violence and sexual slavery as a tactic of war, the Sudan Armed Forces SAF are launching heavy artillery shelling, airstrikes, and indiscriminate attacks, mainly or mostly targeting civilians' homes, markets, bridges, essential public services, and evacuation routes with little to no regard for human life. While most of the incidents of sexual and gender-based violence in Sudan are reportedly perpetrated by RSF, reports also indicate that there are some undocumented cases of abuse and exploitation of women by members of SAF in areas under their control. The level of violence against women, deaths, and devastation in Sudan today exhibits a total disregard for international law. It constitutes war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide punishable by international law. The Sudan Armed Forces have utterly failed to protect the women and girls, provide health assistance, or hold perpetrators accountable. The Sudanese authorities must collaborate with the international community to expedite the deployment of forces to protect women and civilians, urgently deliver humanitarian aid, and create an enabling environment for humanitarian aid to reach all in need, and for safe access and response to women's emergency health needs. Today, I must recognize the resilience of the women of Sudan. Despite the horrific violence and threats they face, they have risen beyond their circumstances. Their courage and determination saved countless lives and continue to keep our community together. When the war erupted and all international humanitarian agencies left the country, it felt like the end of the world for the people of Sudan. However, women and youth stepped forward, taking on the role of frontline humanitarian actors. Amidst the significant danger to their lives, they fed the hungry, provided medicine to those suffering from chronic diseases, documented atrocities, and identified safe routes for those fleeing violence. Today, the situation has gotten out of hand, and it is no longer possible or safe for the locals to provide life-saving assistance or find safety for women and girls. Excellencies, I am appalled by the stories of horror we hear daily. Women and girls have been raped multiple times, sometimes in front of their fathers, husbands, sons, or community leaders, to break the will and destroy their dignity. These women and girls have no protection, no access to humanitarian or medical assistance, and nowhere to turn for help, particularly in Darfur, where RSF strongholds remain impassable. Recent intensified attacks and attacks in Al-Fashir have brought untold suffering on civilians. Systematic attack on medical facilities, restriction on communications, and deliberate obstruction of humanitarian aid by the warring parties are making it nearly impossible for survivors to access life-saving services, including sexual and reproductive health services. This is the horrific reality that the people of Sudan face today, and the Sudanese women need the world's attention, protection, and justice more than ever. Ethnic targeting of women has been well documented. The UN panel of experts and many other reports underline sexual violence committed by members of the RSF and allied militia in all areas under their control, and the targeting of women due to their Masalid and other indigenous African ethnicities. These reports have only confirmed what we have been hearing about for more than a year against women from the Masalid for the Gawa tribe, particularly in the IDPs camp in Darfur. Despite these shocking stories of horror and the gross human rights violations against women of Sudan, they are yet to be protected. And the bare minimum of their emergency needs have yet to be met. Now, it is not the time for us to tell the stories. We must do something that can tangibly change the grim reality for the countless women in Sudan, particularly those trapped in Darfur after 2 decades of genocidal attack on their lives and dignity. It is high time for the international community, the Security Council, to take measures and use the tools at their disposal to protect women, ensure the urgent delivery of humanitarian aid to those in need, and equally hold perpetrators and enablers accountable. I would like to review with this recommendation. In regard to the mandate and the office, Security Council members must swiftly address the challenges facing the Office of SRSG, including securing access to timely field visits to conflict areas like Sudan, to meet survivors and their communities, to bring first-hand information that will inform policymaking at the Security Council, increase resources to ensure the office has increased capacity and strengthen the mandate for timely reporting and advancing accountability. All state parties must meet their obligation and respect the mandate. With regard to the violence against women in Sudan, we urge the Security Council and all stakeholders to expedite the delivery of humanitarian aid. Without delivery of humanitarian aid, women cannot be protected. Was emphasis on emergency response to women's needs. The Security Council must authorize international UN forces to protect civilians in Sudan with the protection of women as an urgent priority. Demand that all parties immediately cease all attacks against women and acts of sexual and gender-based violence and hold perpetrators accountable. The Sudanese authorities must collaborate with the Security Council to ensure an AU to ensure that protection forces are deployed in Sudan to save life. Prioritize the creation of new, well-equipped and more substantial UN presence on the ground to ensure civilian protection and humanitarian operation across the Sudan and document violation of international law. Ensure that women's rights are central to all criminal accountability processes, making violation of women's rights and all forms of sexual and gender-based violence an explicit criterion for imposing sanction on individuals responsible. Maintain and enforce the current arms embargo on Darfur and expand it to all of Sudan and all parties involved in the conflict. Demand and support full, equal, safe, and meaningful participation of Sudanese women in all processes of de-escalation, peace-building, humanitarian, justice and accountability effort, and all political processes regarding Sudan's future. The suffering of women of Sudan has allowed to go on for far too long because of the world's indifference. We cannot afford another 20 years, and we cannot afford even 2 days. It has to be stopped, and it has to be done now. Thank you.